Her brothers thought they had stolen every penny of her inheritance, but the boarded-up bakery their father left behind was hiding a secret that would expose the truth, change her life forever, and make them regret the day they laughed at her. Before we dive into today's incredible story, make sure you're part of our YouTube family by hitting the subscribe button. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now grab a seat, relax, and let's get into the story. The bell above the front door of Brooks & Sons Bakery hadn't rung in almost 4 years. Dust covered the display windows. The faded blue paint on the wooden sign had begun to peel, and thick boards covered the entrance, making the little corner bakery look forgotten by the entire town. But Emma Brooks never forgot it. Every time she walked past the old brick building, memories came rushing back. The smell of warm cinnamon rolls before sunrise, her father's laugh as he dusted flour across the counter, and the long lines of customers who insisted no one baked bread like Samuel Brooks. As a little girl, Emma spent every Saturday morning beside her father. He never treated the bakery like a business. "It's not bread we sell," he always told her while kneading dough. "It's comfort. Every loaf carries a little kindness." Emma believed him. She learned how to shape dough before she learned algebra. She memorized recipes instead of television shows. When customers entered the bakery, her father greeted every person by name. Mrs. Parker always bought raisin bread. Old Mr. Jenkins wanted sourdough every Tuesday. Children received free cookies if they smiled. Samuel somehow remembered everyone. Emma often asked how. "People remember how you make them feel," he would say. "Never forget that." Years passed. Her older brothers, Daniel and Ryan, had different dreams. Daniel studied finance and constantly talked about investments. Ryan wanted bigger opportunities in the city. Neither cared much about the bakery. "It's too much work," Daniel often complained. "The future is supermarkets," Ryan added. Samuel simply smiled. Maybe. Emma noticed something neither brother ever did. Whenever business slowed, her father never looked worried. Instead, he quietly wrote notes inside a thick leather journal. He kept hidden beneath the old cash register. She once reached for it. Samuel gently closed it. "One day," he whispered. "Not yet." Emma never asked again. Then everything changed. Samuel began coughing. At first it seemed harmless. Within months, doctors discovered the illness was far more serious than anyone expected. Emma put her own plans on hold, while Daniel focused on expanding his investment portfolio, and Ryan chased business deals. Emma drove her father to treatments, cooked meals, cleaned the bakery, and stayed beside him during long nights when sleep became impossible. She never complained. Samuel noticed. "You deserve your own life," he said one evening. "I already have one. You shouldn't spend it taking care of an old baker." Emma smiled through tired eyes. "You spent yours taking care of everyone else." He couldn't argue. As his health declined, the bakery closed its doors. Samuel refused to sell it despite receiving generous offers from developers eager to buy the valuable corner property. Daniel grew frustrated. "Dad, the building's falling apart." Ryan agreed. "You can retire comfortably if you sell." Samuel shook his head every time. "No." "Why?" Daniel finally demanded. Samuel looked toward the bakery window. "Because some things aren't measured by today's price." Neither son understood. Emma wasn't sure she did either. Months later, Samuel Brooks passed away peacefully. The funeral filled the church. Customers traveled from neighboring towns. Retired teachers, firefighters, doctors, construction workers, young parents carrying children who had once received free cookies from Samuel. Every person seemed to have a story. "He gave me bread when I couldn't afford groceries. He baked my wedding cake. He delivered food after my husband died." Emma listened quietly. She realized her father had helped far more people than she ever knew. Daniel and Ryan mostly discussed paperwork. "We'll need to appraise everything. The house alone is worth a fortune. The savings should be divided equally." Emma barely heard them. She missed her father too much to think about money. 3 days later, the family gathered inside attorney Margaret Ellis's office. The room felt strangely cold. Margaret unfolded Samuel's final will. As directed by Samuel Brooks, Daniel leaned forward confidently. Ryan smiled. Emma sat silently. "The family residence shall be inherited jointly by Daniel Brooks and Ryan Brooks." Both brothers nodded. "The investment accounts shall be divided equally between Daniel Brooks and Ryan Brooks." Another satisfied glance passed between them. "The delivery van and commercial baking equipment stored in the warehouse shall also transfer jointly to Daniel Brooks and Ryan Brooks." Emma blinked. She hadn't heard her name once. Margaret continued reading. "The corner bakery located on Oak Street." Daniel grinned. "Shall belong entirely to my daughter, Emma Brooks." Silence. Then Ryan laughed. "The bakery?" Daniel couldn't hide his smile. "The boarded-up bakery?" Margaret nodded. "That concludes the property distribution." Ryan leaned back. "I thought Dad was joking." Daniel chuckled. "Honestly, Emma," he looked almost sympathetic, "we'll help you tear it down if you want. Ryan added another laugh. You inherited broken ovens and unpaid utility bills. Margaret quietly slid a small envelope across the desk. These keys were left specifically for Emma. Emma accepted them carefully. They felt heavier than expected. Old brass keys, the same ones her father carried every day. Daniel stood. Looks like we got the assets, Ryan smiled. And you got the memories. Neither realized how much those words would matter. Outside the office, neighbors whispered. Poor Emma, after everything she did for her father. She deserved better. Emma smiled politely. She didn't answer. That evening she drove to the bakery. The street looked quieter than she remembered. The building stood exactly as it had the day it closed. Weathered, silent, forgotten. She unlocked the boards covering the entrance. The hinges groaned loudly. Dust floated through beams of afternoon sunlight as she pushed the old door open. The familiar scent of flour, vanilla, and aged wood still lingered faintly in the air. She stepped inside. Nothing had moved. Aprons still hung beside the kitchen door. Mixing bowls rested exactly where they had been left. The chalkboard menu remained frozen in time. Cinnamon rolls, fresh every morning. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She slowly walked behind the counter, running her fingers across the worn wooden surface. She remembered standing there as a child barely tall enough to see over it. She could almost hear her father's voice. Always greet people with a smile. She smiled through tears. Then something caught her attention. Near the old cash register, several scratches covered the wood. At first they looked random, but as she brushed away years of dust, the markings became clearer. Someone had carved tiny letters into the underside of the counter. Not initials, a sentence. One she had never noticed before. It read, "But look beneath where every morning begins." Emma frowned. Those weren't random words. They were instructions. She looked around the bakery. Every morning begins. The ovens? The flour bins? The bread table? Or, her eyes slowly turned toward the massive wooden mixing bench where her father had started every single day before sunrise. Heart pounding, Emma walked toward it. She knelt beside the bench and noticed one floorboard looked slightly newer than the others. Someone had replaced it years ago. Very carefully, she rested her hand on the wood. Just as she prepared to lift it, she heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the bakery's front door. Emma froze. The old wooden floor creaked beneath her knees as the sound of the turning key echoed through the silent bakery. Her heart pounded. No one should have another key. She slowly stood and looked toward the entrance. The door opened with a long groan. Standing there was an elderly man wearing a brown jacket dusted with flour. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and in one hand he held an old paper bag. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. Then the man smiled sadly. "You must be Emma." She nodded cautiously. "I'm Walter Hayes." The name sounded familiar. Her father had mentioned it years ago. "Walt?" Emma asked quietly. "The baker who trained with Dad?" Walter smiled. "So, he told you about me." Emma remembered old stories of two young bakers working side by side before sunrise, laughing over failed recipes and dreaming of opening the best bakery in the county. "I heard you moved away." "I did." Walter looked around the empty room. "But Sam asked me to come back one day." Emma's eyes widened. "He knew he was dying." Walter nodded. "He mailed me a letter 6 months ago." He reached into his jacket and carefully unfolded an envelope. On the front, in Samuel Brooks' familiar handwriting, were the words, "And give this to Emma when she opens the bakery again." Emma carefully opened it. Inside was a short handwritten note. "Emma, if you're reading this, then you chose hope instead of giving up. Good. Before you do anything else, trust Walter. He knows what I never had time to teach you." Tears filled Emma's eyes. Walter gently placed a hand on the old mixing bench. "Your father believed this bakery still had one last chapter." Emma looked toward the loose floorboard. "I found a message." Walter smiled. "I wondered when you would." Together they carefully removed the wooden plank. Beneath it sat a small iron box wrapped in waxed cloth. Its lock had long rusted away. Emma lifted the lid. Inside wasn't money. There were dozens of handwritten recipe cards tied together with blue ribbon, old photographs, property maps, customer letters, and the thick leather journal Emma remembered from childhood. She opened the first page. Written neatly across the top were 6 words. The bakery was never the treasure. Emma frowned. She continued reading. Each page contained recipes, but also stories. There was Mrs. Parker's cinnamon bread, created after she lost her husband. A soft white loaf developed for children with weak teeth. A honey oat recipe inspired by a struggling farmer who paid for bread with eggs instead of money. Every recipe carried someone's story. Walter smiled. Sam never baked for profits. He baked for people. Emma spent hours reading. As evening approached, she reached a folded survey map hidden inside the journal. She spread it across the counter. Something immediately stood out. The bakery property didn't stop at the brick wall behind the building. According to the original deed, it stretched into the vacant lot next door. Emma stared at it. "Everyone thinks that lot belongs to the city." Walter shook his head. It never did. Then why didn't Dad say anything? He was waiting. For what? Walter looked directly into her eyes. For someone who cared more about serving people than becoming rich, Emma quietly folded the map. For the first time, she understood why her father never sold the bakery. The building wasn't simply a bakery. It was unfinished. The following morning, Emma unlocked the front doors completely. Sunlight flooded the dusty shop. She rolled up her sleeves. The work began. Broken shelves came down. Windows were washed. Years of dust disappeared. Neighbors walking past slowed to watch. Mrs. Parker stopped first. "You reopening?" Emma smiled nervously. "I hope so." The older woman reached into her purse and handed Emma $20. "My first bread order." Emma tried to refuse. Mrs. Parker gently pushed her hand away. "Your father once fed my family when I couldn't pay. It's my turn now." By afternoon, several more neighbors had arrived. Some brought cleaning supplies. Others carried paintbrushes. Retired carpenter Bill Hansen repaired broken tables without charging a penny. Teenagers swept floors. Someone fixed the bakery sign. No one had been asked. They simply came. Watching them work, Emma realized something important. Her father hadn't built customers. He had built a community. Walter reopened the old ovens. The first test batch of bread filled the bakery with a smell the town hadn't experienced in years. People stopped on the sidewalk. Some simply stood outside smiling. Others wiped away tears. Within days, Emma baked every morning before sunrise. She greeted customers exactly as Samuel once had, by name, with a smile. Children once again received free cookies. The line outside grew longer every day. Even local newspapers came to photograph the bakery's return. Daniel and Ryan noticed. One afternoon, they walked inside wearing expensive suits. Daniel looked around. "I'll admit, this place looks better." Ryan glanced toward the growing line outside. "Business seems good." Emma continued kneading dough. Neither brother offered to help. Instead, Daniel asked, "So what's the plan?" "I'm rebuilding." Ryan smiled politely. "If business keeps growing, maybe we should discuss partnership." Emma looked up. "Partnership?" Daniel laughed softly. "We're family." Before Emma could answer, the front door opened again. A black luxury SUV stopped outside. 3 sharply dressed men stepped into the bakery. The tallest introduced himself. "My name is Victor Langford." He placed a leather folder on the counter. "I'm representing Langford Development." Walter's smile disappeared. Victor unfolded architectural drawings. "We've purchased nearly every building on this block." Emma studied the papers. Only one property remained highlighted. Her bakery, and the empty lot beside it, Victor continued. "We'll begin demolition within 30 days. Emma frowned. "That lot isn't yours." Victor calmly slid another document toward her. "County records disagree." Walter immediately reached for the old survey map hidden beneath the counter. Victor smiled. "I've already checked. The current records list no ownership by Samuel Brooks." Emma's heartbeat quickened. The journal said otherwise. One of the documents had to be wrong. Victor adjusted his tie. "I'll make this simple." He pushed a purchase agreement across the counter. "Sell the bakery. It's worth more to us than it ever will be to you." Emma looked around. The restored ovens, the smiling customers, the photographs of her father, the recipes, the people gathering every morning. This wasn't just a building anymore. It was becoming home again. She slowly pushed the contract back across the counter. "My answer is no." Victor smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." He reached into his briefcase and placed one final envelope on the counter. Inside was a notice from the county, announcing an emergency. Hearing over the ownership of the neighboring land. The hearing was only 5 days away. And according to the documents Victor carried, if Emma couldn't prove her father owned that property before the hearing ended, the bakery itself could be condemned and demolished with it. Emma barely slept the night before the hearing. The old leather journal lay open on the kitchen table beside dozens of faded papers, receipts and handwritten notes. Every page smelled faintly of flour and vanilla, as though her father's presence still lingered between the worn sheets. Walter sat across from her, quietly reading through another stack of documents. "There has to be something," he said. "Sam never kept records without a reason." Emma nodded. Her father had always been organized. Too organized to lose something as important as a property deed. She carefully turned another page. Most of the journal contained recipes and memories. Then she noticed something unusual. Several pages near the back felt thicker than the others. She gently held one against the light. A hidden pocket. Her heart began racing. Using the tip of a butter knife, she carefully opened the sealed edge. A folded envelope slipped onto the table. Walter smiled before she even opened it. "I knew he'd hide it somewhere." Emma unfolded the brittle papers. Inside was the original deed to the vacant lot beside the bakery. It carried the official county seal, Samuel Brooks' signature, and the recorded purchase date from 32 years earlier. Behind it was another document, a handwritten letter addressed to the county land office requesting the property records be corrected after an old filing mistake. The letter had been stamped "Received" decades ago. Emma looked at Walter. They knew. Walter nodded slowly. The correction was never entered into the new digital records. Morning arrived. The county courthouse was packed. Word of the hearing had spread across town. Customers who had once stood in line for Samuel's bread now filled the benches. Mrs. Parker, Mr. Jenkins, Bill Hanson, teachers, firefighters, even people who had moved away returned after hearing the bakery might disappear forever. Victor Langford entered confidently with 2 lawyers. Daniel and Ryan sat quietly behind Emma. Neither brother spoke. For the first time since their father's death, they seemed more ashamed than proud. When the hearing began, Victor's attorneys presented modern property, records showing the vacant lot as unclaimed land later, purchased by Langford Development. Everything appeared legal. The judge turned toward Emma. "Do you have evidence challenging these records?" Emma stood. Her hands trembled slightly. Then she remembered her father's words. "People remember how you make them feel." She took a deep breath. "Yes, Your Honor." She handed the original deed to the court clerk. Then the correction request. Then several old tax receipts proving Samuel. Brooks had paid taxes on both parcels every year. Silence spread through the courtroom. The county recorder examined the documents carefully. His expression slowly changed. He requested access to archived microfilm records. An hour later, he returned carrying an old ledger. He opened it before the judge. There was an administrative recording. Error during a records transfer. 30 years ago. He looked toward Victor's lawyers. The Brooks family never lost ownership. The correction request was filed. It simply was never entered into the computerized system. The courtroom erupted with whispers. The judge raised his hand for silence. The original deed is valid. The neighboring lot legally belongs to Emma Brooks. Victor Langford's confident smile disappeared. His attorneys quietly gathered their files. The case was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Emma. She answered only one question. "What will you do with the land now?" She smiled gently. "The same thing my father always wanted." Months passed. Construction began beside the bakery. Not luxury apartments, not office buildings. A beautiful cafe filled with sunlight, bookshelves, long wooden tables, and fresh flowers from local farms. The old vacant lot became a community garden where children learned to grow vegetables. Retired bakers volunteered to teach young people. Every Saturday morning, free bread was placed on a small wooden shelf outside the bakery for anyone who needed it, exactly as Samuel once had. Business flourished. Travel magazines wrote about Brooks Corner Bakery. Food bloggers traveled across the state just to taste Emma's cinnamon rolls. Visitors often asked for the secret ingredient. Emma always smiled. Kindness. Daniel visited one quiet afternoon carrying a small toolbox. "I heard one of your display shelves is loose." Emma nodded. "It is." Without another word, he repaired it. When he finished, he quietly said, "I'm sorry." Emma looked at him. "I spent years chasing things worth selling. I forgot to notice things worth keeping." Ryan arrived the following week. He offered to manage deliveries without charging a salary until the bakery could hire more drivers. Neither brother expected forgiveness. They simply wanted to earn another chance. Emma gave them one, not because they deserved it, because her father would have. One spring morning, Emma unlocked the bakery before sunrise. The familiar smell of fresh bread filled the air. Children laughed outside. Neighbors gathered with coffee. The cafe buzzed with conversation. The community garden bloomed beside the building. She walked behind the old wooden counter and rested her hand on the carved message that had started everything. "Look beneath where every morning begins." She finally understood. Her father hadn't hidden money. He had hidden purpose. The real treasure had never been the land, the building, or the bakery itself. It was the chance to bring people together, to serve with generosity, and to leave every person a little happier than they were before they walked through the door. Emma looked toward the framed photograph of Samuel smiling behind the counter. For just a moment, it felt as though he smiled back. Outside, the bell above the bakery door rang again as another customer entered. Then another, and another. The bakery that everyone once called worthless had become the warmest heart of the town, proving that the greatest inheritance isn't measured by what someone leaves behind, but by the lives they inspire others to build.